Alright, so apparently my last attempt at recording the stream failed and my microphone stopped working, so let me just tidy that up. Um, I need to get rid of that. Oh well, that's unfortunate. What a waste. Alright, well, here we go again. So, yeah, crap, I'm completely lost now. Right, so loot spawning, that's where we were last time. So currently we've got it so we have loot spawning in specific locations in all the POIs, which means we can control where they can spawn, but also limit it so that players don't always look in the same locations. Um, which is solved by, well, which is kind of covered by the next one as well. So multiple loot locations with potential to spawn. And it allows for like exploration of all of the POIs, so you have to look everywhere. I'm losing my voice already. Maybe it's how I'm sitting or something, I don't know. Maybe I should get a standing desk. um, right. So loot will respawn based on the first time a player interacts with it. So this makes sense. So this is like this um will mean loot isn't spawned on a holding system. Um there Therefore players can't wait for loot cycles to double up on loot. So the idea is like because loot doesn't even exist until somebody gets close enough. And when they do, it rolls like if you open a container, it would like roll the RNG in it and attempt to spawn the relevant loot. But once you do that, it's on a per container basis. Um, and then it's more like a individually controlled respawn timer. And I guess the idea is if the server restarts, these will be like local timers, not stored anywhere. And so if the server restarts, it will like that will force them to redo all of the loot. But I think that's a reasonable solution. Um, that way we can have store like temporary data on loot containers, and then the world can poll every like 5 minutes or something and check the date time stamps of loot containers that have been looted essentially. So there'll be like a table, an array of data, and the first one is like potential loot containers. The next one would be like spawned loot containers, and like the spawned loot containers will be quite limited because it will only be based on players that have gone in the area to trigger them. So like the first array is just basic information. There is this loot container, it's at this location, and that's it. And then the next one will be any of them that have been spawned in the world, and then every 5 minutes or so we can just poll and do a timer and like trigger the respawn. Or essentially what it would do is if there's not a player within the radius, so if the POI overall isn't active, then it can just put them back in the unspawned list, something like that, or well, remove themselves from the spawned list essentially. Um, yeah, and then just go back to being any random thing, and it can figure itself out again when that happens. And if there is a player there, it immediately figures itself out again. And so if somebody's like AFK nearby, or they just come on the server and they've been running around for a minute, they go past a base, it triggers all of the spawns and stuff. Something like that. I think that would be quite manageable. Any downsides to this? Because the only problem, I suppose, is what happens. So, what happens to loot that hasn't been found by the player? Will existing spawned loot and until found. So this is an interesting proposition. So like, say for the sake of argument, nobody found this particular tool or even bothered to pick it up. Does it just exist infinitely? Like if there was I don't know, some clothes on the floor or something that somebody wanted to pick up, they actually, if nobody wanted it, then it's just going to persist forever. So we should probably put a timer on that gets rid of them after a certain time as well. I think that's a reasonable thing. So they do get forcibly respawned in the same way that looted loot does. Which at that point begs the question of why don't you just use a polling system anyway? So if we've got loot spawning and you're just polling, but the problem is like somebody goes to an area, they open a chest or a crate, take the stuff from it, and then whilst they're in the crate, it just like respawns all of the loot, and you're just like, huh. Now I appreciate that's a possibility on very high population servers, which is the point. Like more people, you need more loot generation. So it's bound to happen at some point. But I feel like this is maybe a separate issue. So I could have it so unlooted loot will cycle spawn and forcer force the loot system to reval. You wait the state of current loot POI. Something like that. Reval U8. Something to that effect. Okay. Let's figure this out, because I'm interested to see what this comes of this. So this would be player enters range POI. POI attempts to activates mount mutables in its area. Loot containers. The non-container loot spawns immediately. And then the container lootables spawn. Decide it could contain such what type of contain okay, so if a lootable was looted, system recalculate the loot after the respawn time. This calculation will count current. What was that? Okay, so what, where are we? Here. So what I'm thinking is, calculation. Current will take into account all current lootables that are available. This will, hang on, this will therefore pick a similar type of table. A lootable wasn't looted and passed a unlooted spawn time. Past an unlooted respawn time. Then we'll recalculate the loot. I think that's pretty self-explanatory stuff. So what we want is to actually figure out how to approach this. What the calculation would be. So this would be okay, that's fine. Non-mission loot spawn. So this would be like get lootable locations set quantity based on players on server. This is interesting. So if I've got a if I've got like a small town, it's got like 15 locations that loot can spawn. How do I calculate which ones to use? How many? It should be just like a kind of a fixed percentage of them, like a third or something. And would we want more loot to spawn when there are more players on the server? Seems reasonable. Is there anything else? Because this is like the fundamentals of the economy of the game, I suppose, here. What else would you need to consider? So there's the loot tables, right? Yeah, that's good. Alright, so read the loot tables and assign randomly based on table data. Some loot will be fixed / forced. This will be optional / random. So this is like yeah, there's going to be some which are guaranteed and others which are completely random. So I suppose if we've got like an ID for each loot table, and you've basically end up with a list of integers to relate to the ones which we want. And let's say you're spawning 8 locations out of 15, then you would pick off the forced ones and just put them in and write them off. And then the rest, you just do random or something for them. You could put them all in an array and just shuffle the array and then take from them, something simple like that. Rather than an actual random. That seems reasonable. Although, would you want potentially multiple? I don't know. But yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. Server / uh 6%. Uh, hmm. I'm wondering whether or not it'll feel a bit crappy to go to a location that's got less loot in it based on the amount of players on the server. Kind of. Like if you're... It's difficult because see, you would have to have... Well, I don't know. The problem is you can carry. So there's like I suppose there's like two types of people who play this typically. There's the uh people who just run around and shoot people and get the bare minimum they need to survive and go and do the job they want. And then there's the hoarders and people who like take everything just in case. I can't satisfy both of them, but it would feel mighty crappy to finally get to a location on even on a low populated server and get less loot for your troubles. But I suppose it's like the risk reward factor. So I guess what the implication of basing it on the amount of players in the server is that there's more risk of other people, which is the point of these kinds of games. So maybe it's fine. We'll see. Um yeah. Okay. I don't think there's much more to be done on that. That really is all there is to it. And the only difference with this and the mission spawn loot. So this would be read the POI and mission loot tables and assigned randomly based on the data. Some loot will be fixed, others will force random. Um with mission loot. Okay, so hang on, so the size of the POI players on the server. And mission difficulty. Yeah. With mission loot more towards the amount of players. Some missions might cause all lootable locations to be available. As they are something like that. Something to think about. Hmm. Yeah, okay. POI. Wait. Right. I really wish this would go to tables when I do that. Hmm. I like that. That's all good. Is there anything else you want to cover with loot? Because it's a pretty. It's kind of the fundamental problem of survival games is how the loot system works. Unlooted loot. Right. Wrong. Not that kind of loot though. A lot of bards in this game. Right, so um hmm. I could potentially make it. Hmm. I wonder if loot inside a container, once it's spawned, do we like despawn it entirely after a certain duration, regardless of somebody else finding it? Like give it 5 minutes after somebody tries to loot it, and then it still might take at the same time to respawn. It's just it's now not there at all. Or is that kind of that's probably a bit crappy. Um, I mean, we can do that if all players have left the vicinity and just despawn everything in that environment. That's a possibility. I think the idea of a radial grid system is probably going to be quite effective. Essentially, I need. Hmm. I kind of need a means of every time a player moves. I suppose I could just poll every minute, read every player's current location, get a grid position, do a distance check for grids rather than location size, distance. I mean, it's just basic integer comparison, I suppose. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I was just thinking about how to manage the grid system better, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. Oh, I kind of need the loo. Hang on. Right. um. Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. I'm thinking I need to do a polling system for the triggering of AI and things. Just once a minute, it just checks everybody's approximate grid location and goes, how many slots away are you from, how many grid sections are you away from every POI? They just have like a arbitrary center point, and if it's ever close enough, it decides to do all of the AI spawning and the loot and all that kind of stuff. I think it will be quite trivial because in the Unreal Engine, if it was like every X and Y coordinate of 500 was like 500 square, um, equated to a different grid section, then we could just poll the server, and then you just convert every POI central location, which could just be stored in a database, and it's like if the grid X and Y, which would be this actor location X and Y divided by 500, that kind of thing. It just simplifies the maths and makes it a nice clean system. And I can spawn visual representations of the grid as well, which is pretty cool. I've done that already on something. Um, there we go. Okay, we've lost track. I keep feeling like I don't really care about continuing this much anymore, but it is necessary and it's kind of interesting. I don't know. Hmm. Maybe it's alright. Let's condense these down. There's no reason to have them separate. There we go. Okay. Does that still work? Yeah, good. Alright. Let's type A for some reason. It's probably not quite what I had in mind, but yeah. And then we got loot tables. Yeah, fair enough. Hmm. I still haven't even made a functional multiplayer game in the Unreal Engine yet. I kind of tried it once before and got it working briefly, but I think I lost the project files or it broke in an update or something, which really sucks. But I need to try again at some point. Another time. Um, yeah, there's a lot here, and I just need to keep going, I think. AI is spawning, yeah. Emap currency, yeah. Hmm. Death squads raiding. Goodness me. You know, the actual survival aspects of the survival game as well. Jeez. Oh dear. um. I think I'm already kind of done. I don't know. I'm not particularly feeling this at the moment. Maybe I should do something else. Let's I kind of want to keep this as separate without having to edit it. So not that I edit them ever. Um what do we do? I don't know, some progress has been made. Made some decisions, calculations of things. So I already kind of have this stuff working for the most part. Or conceptually it exists. I just need to make the data a little more intricate. So what the loot tables are realistically just item ID, quantity, range, min, max, and then whether it's optional or not. Fixed or optional. And that's it. And then you just collate that data, loop through the array, pick some values, put them in place. Got a container, you tell the container what to look like based on the loot table. So I suppose the loot might be a container just as much as a specific item as well. So I do need to... I suppose I could just have loot type, item container. So you guarantee containers and things. Which is basically what I've been saying down here. Though I don't think... Loot type, this will be either item or container. Rarity, nobody cares about rarity that much. Do you want complete random or rarity? Ooh, there's an interesting choice. Complete random chance has the potential to never spawn something or to always spawn something. Whereas rarity, you can at least weight it so that it both always and never spawns, but like on a cycle. I like the idea of RNG where things always occur at some point. So like do we've got the loot spawn calculations. So let's do... So like, the way this should probably work... Well, the way I've done this in the past, and I quite like it. So... the POI has a full list of lootable items slash containers. The list is retained between spawning loot and simply cycles. That's it. It reaches the bottom, picks from top again. So the idea is that so we would have an array. So let's say it'd be something like this. And then it would be like in something like it. And the rarity would be like lower the higher. Lower is rarer. So 1 is the most unique, right? So it'd then be like Aston loot start. I want to actually figure this out. So then we end up with loot. Yeah, something like that. So rarity 1 items get added to the list, and so you end up with like a guarantee of things appearing, but they appear in a sort of a sequenced order that then gets randomly generated every time. So does that bypass? That kind of gets around the fixed. And okay, so hang on, if let's go with if loot dot fixed, and if not loot dot fixed, Oh, I know. So if the loot is fixed, um, or it's like I forget how it is. Is it? I think it's map dot rand. Hmm. Interesting. Oh, is this actually putting it in? All right, it's kind of putting it in a code-like form. And does this make it go into code mode? Oh, kind of started going into a code format when I had it make that. Oh, okay, there we go. Intriguing. Hang on, let me just look up ASCII doc code block. What? ASCII doc code block. Thank you very much. Okay. So it's there we go. Nice. If I get rid of that, probably no. Okay, fair enough. And if I do seed, intriguing. All right. Anyway, it looks better now. Um. Hmm. Yeah, this doesn't solve the problem. I think the problem I'm having is there's two sets of randomness going on here. And one kind of supersedes the other. So I don't think rarity really matters too much, does it? Let me just look at the there's I don't know, it would be easier to find it on here, I think. Where are we looking? No project, survival. Presumably I've got a random thing somewhere in here. Blah 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 blah. So to the type of functions with neighbor plus plus. Oh. Oh, good grief. This is useless. Right, here we go. Oh, look, it's some code. So do I have random? Generate euro. Get random. Oh, right, yeah, yeah, right. I wasn't far from it. Random range. There we go. Anywho, so what are we looking like? Probably a nerd. Usually the case. Hmm. Hmm. I need to do this differently. So this would be fixed loot. This would be optional. Same premise. Hmm. Something like this. Okay, so now we end up with a list of loot that's fixed and a list of optional loot. Now, realistically, we don't need fixed loot. That can just go straight into available loot. And then we would have something like int loot left lootable locations left equals get POI locations dot it's num. And then we want another one of these. Something like that. We would like well, hang on, let's just have a look. Okay, it doesn't not what I was looking for. Hang on. Right. Oh, no, there's a means of shuffling the array. Is it 1F? Thought there was a shuffle array method or something. Anywho, so I don't want to get a random one. I just want to alternate and pick from it. But it would essentially be something like this. And we do something to that effect. Alright, that's looking reasonable to me. So they get added based on their rarity to the table. Multiple times. And otherwise they get potentially added, and then you have a list of the potential loot. Actually, maybe we don't do this. Okay, so now all the optional loot gets added regardless. And then we just shuffle the array, find out how many slots we have left, minus the ones that we've already occupied. And then we just, yeah, shuffle them around. I think that's pretty reasonable. I like fixed loot would probably have a rarity of 1. Anyway. Well. Yeah, so we can kind of make that assumption. Or we just assume that the rarity doesn't matter for fixed loot. Yeah. Highlights a bit more of it. Cool. Yeah, anyway, so the idea is we populate an array and we don't randomly pick items and keep looping back over the other array. We simply add more quantity of the more common items to the array and then just shuffle the array order. And that way, when we come to respawning loot, we only redo this calculation when the optional loot gets emptied. So this could like be a stack, and it would be like pop it or something. I don't know. Anyway, the idea will be we cycle through it, take from it, and when it runs out, we just rerun this method. We clear it all out and start again or something. I don't know. But the idea is we want a list that contains all of the optional loot and fixed loot. So let's actually separate it again and just call this fixed. Alright, and then the available loop gets a copy of it. And then on respawn, if the loot is optional, it takes from the next one down in the array, and that array is fixed. And if it wasn't an optional one, it just takes the next fixed one, and it just chooses a different location to spawn at. Or it respawns itself, just, yeah, in a different place. So there would be like, we would have like if loot dot fixed um then this would be sort of a lootable equals get next free location, and then it would be like lootable dot set loot. Right, so if it's fixed loot, that's all it does. It literally just finds the next location, sets itself up again in a different location. Else, otherwise we do the same principle, but instead of loot, it goes loot equals get next optional loot, and then we could have another method which would be like this, and then we'd be something like int last optional loot value index this would be temp, and it would literally equal this, and then we'd increment it, and obviously check whether it goes higher or lower than the list, but optional loot. There we go, something like that. So now what we're essentially saying is if loot respawns, if it's fixed, just get the next free lootable location. I mean, we're going to do that in both cases, so we might as well do that. And there's no reason. So in both cases, we're going to get the next location, set the lootables loot, which will like trigger it to spawn and figure its shit out, what it looks like and everything. And then this, if it's not fixed, it will just get the next optional loot, which will run this, which will increment this, and this will be like if last optional loot index greater than optional loot dot optional loot equals 0 else. There we go. Right, something like that. And now that will increment it, and so all the optional loot will be loot over. It will just pick the next one, the next one, the next one. So you can guarantee that the loot cycle will always spawn one of these items regardless of RNG. And then, yeah. And otherwise it's fixed and it just figures itself out. I think that's a pretty effective means. We probably want void just to put this in a thing for consistency's sake. There we go. Looks a lot cleaner now. Oh, nice. Alright, well, I've done some code. This might save me some trouble in the future. There's the crux of the gameplay, loot tables and things. So yeah, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. But I've put some thought into it, and that's all that matters. Cool. Alright, well, I think that's all I've got in me at the moment. I need to try and figure out what the hell to do with the rest of my time. Unfortunately, I've been having some trouble actually doing anything for the most part this week. Not much seems to take my interest anymore, so whatever. Alright, I'll see you guys around.